So I have the pleasure this morning of sharing with you the IFR statistics and the statistics of the global robotics market as reflected for 2025. These numbers are preliminary for right now, as of reported as of April of this year in 2026, and there will likely be some changes to the data before the official reports are published later this year. They will be available in September, and I encourage anybody who is not receiving this to really subscribe, and the information that is included is not just numbers, but some perspective of what's happening in the industry as well. So let's dive into the numbers. The short-term review is that we saw an exceptionally strong year with a 15% growth in industrial robot installs around the world. It's the first time that we've seen this number of over 600,000 units being installed, so great news for our industry. In the longer term, we see that sustained growth with annual new installments doubling over the course of the last decade have also occurred. So the indication is that things are good, things are looking up, and it's a good environment for us to be in right now. Great news for our industry. Let's look a little bit into the individual segments that we manage. We see rising demand for electronics, not unsuspected, and this is what is really driving capacity expansion. Robots are going to be needed to reproduce these goods, and the key demand drivers obviously include data centers, which we hear a lot about, but also power electronics for renewable energy as well. The automotive globally stays strong with an increase, a 10% increase occurring, and metal and machining also stay strong with an 11% increase there. You'll also see that one of the other areas of growth is, we term it other, and we're going to talk a little bit about what goes into that other growth. This is the second year we have seen this kind of growth occurring in that segment. There we go. Further strong growth is seen in Asia, but we see the divide between the regions widening. As mentioned previously, the numbers are still estimated, and the preliminary data may change, but the preliminary numbers still show very, very strong growth in Asia, and the market share continues to grow. The chart on the right shows the improvement both in Asia and in the US in 2025, but it does show continued contraction in Europe as that continues from 2024. So now let's delve into the United States and look specifically at the United States and where we are. So following 2 years of declining installations, US robot demand has rebounded very strongly in 2025. Great news for this area of the world. 2025 is ranked as the third strongest year on record, behind only 2018 and 2022. And I'd like to point out in 2022, we saw a lot of COVID investment, money that had been held back during COVID being invested in that time. So we really feel that the growth trajectory is very strong. Focusing on the US, we'll still delve a little bit deeper, and we'll look at the different segments that are involved. Surprisingly, automotive has stayed stable from year to year, and we're still seeing strong assumptions from the automotive industry. But the growth came from the food industry and above all from sectors that are outside manufacturing. Sectors that are called other are things like warehousing, logistics, medical, other areas that we have traditionally not tracked as individual segments, and maybe that is something going forward that IFR will be looking at to see if we change the way in which we look at that. Moving on to Mexico, unfortunately not the same message in Mexico. The third year of contraction for Mexico. More than 60% of the robot demand in Mexico comes from the automotive industry, and it really follows the automotive investment cycle. Automotive in 2025 in Mexico was down 10%, and the year before that it was down 4%. As the production base is tied very closely to the US market, investment decisions in Mexico depend heavily on export opportunities. And there's a lot of uncertainty, as we all know, around trade relations, and that has weighed on the robot demand in Mexico up to now. However, good news for our friends to the north of us in Canada. They have actually seen a 6% increase year over year. This is a very volatile market because 50% of the market in Canada is made up of automotive suppliers. But this has been compensated this year by demand from electronics at 101% growth rate and food at 58% growth rate. Great news for Canada, and I think they're really diversifying up there. So now I want to talk a little bit about robot densities, something that IFR manages and measures across the world. The definition of robot density is the number of industrial robots that are in operation per 10,000 manufacturing employees. And what you can see on the map is obviously the size of the bubble on the map denotes those that are the strongest in that particular area. The global average has now risen to 132 robots. And from a regional perspective, Europe leads that with 148. The Americas comes in second at 131, and Asia at the same rate as 131. And I think what's interesting here is that we now see Americas and Asia at the same level. If we break down the US and the Americas further, we see the US at 307, Canada at 241, and Mexico at 62. But again, there is an increase in each one of these, so it tells us that more robots are being used in operations alongside employees, and employees are becoming more comfortable in using robots alongside with what they do. I will point out here that China is ranking at 22. We did start to use different data this year, labor data that we felt was more reliable from China, and this moved China's ranking from number 3 of last year to number 22 of this year. So interesting dynamic there. There we go. So the outlook for 2026, very positive. Our industry is strong. Our PMI is currently at over 54. We are back on a growth track with 11% growth in the Americas. Our robots per head or per robot density is increasing to 307 in the US. And we've seen over $750 billion invested into AI data just in 2026 alone. So there's a ton of opportunity for us to all go and take care of. Very strong turnover in North America and Asia in Q1 of 2026. Robot orders have remained stable in the first quarter. Unfortunately, we don't see the same thing in Europe. We see recessive order intake is continuing, and the turnover there continues to decrease. But obviously with the geopolitical situations that are faced there right now, not unexpected. Our growing sectors are chemicals and pharmaceuticals, and also, not surprisingly, the electrical and electronics industry. Interestingly, general industry demand is now outpacing automotive through 2025. So we don't necessarily, although automotive remains incredibly important to us, we have other areas where we're seeing growth now occur that we can move into. Diversification of automation demand across industries supports a positive long-term outlook. But we will counter that by just mentioning that cyclical weakness in the automotive OEM investments and uncertainty about timing of large projects makes it difficult for us to continue to forecast what will happen in those. They can make very, very big impacts into the forecast as we move forward.